The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. WealthBuilders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 163 of Wealth Talk. My name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders, and I'm joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you again. And great news that we've got another fantastic intake of wonderful new people deciding to take responsibility to build their own financial independence. And I'm so pleased for them because there's so much conflicting noise out there, isn't there? And all of these challenges and the economic wind that's blowing on us is obviously blowing a lot of people off course. But we're so pleased we've got a whole bunch of new people joining us so that they can build a financial fortress for themselves and buffet themselves against this economic wind. And speaking about economic wind, you know, the last one was COVID, and we got a guest today who smashed it out of the park during COVID, right?
Yes, she did indeed. Today we'll be featuring Heather Smail, who's the founder of Blonde Property. And Heather has worked or is working with some of our Wealth Builder members right now, and fantastic reviews and feedback. And Heather's got a really amazing story, which she'll be sharing with us today. Very inspiring. And I guess really, you know, today we're focusing on, whilst it's a property strategy that's helped Heather achieve financial independence, the message today really is of mindset and resilience. And of course, mindset is step one in our recurring revenue roadmap, Kevin. It's, you know, starting with the end in mind, but also, you know, really understanding what's important to you. And, you know, Heather talks about freedom today being, you know, something that's of utmost importance.
I think it's critical to revisit step one from time to time. And Chris, you'll know that I'm a great teacher and I love my acronyms, and probably my favorite one and the most oft used is the ROI. You know, I think we've got up to 11 ROIs now that we can, we can lay claim to ownership of. But the one that I like most, and I'm not going to steal Heather's thunder, but the one that I like most that's critical because it gives permission for the journey to start, is a reason to overcome inertia. So many people get stuck with a kind of self-determined belief that, oh, well, I can't do anything with COVID. I can't do anything in inflation. I can't do anything until we know who the new prime minister is. You know, I can't. And what we're saying is, you know, that you will never be wealthy unless you can overcome the inertia and take those initial steps. So we're so pleased to hear, and I resonate very deeply, as people will very soon realize, with the story of Heather and what were the reason, or more than one reason actually, that she overcome her own inertia and is now not just financially secure, not just financially independent, but beyond that, and is on a pathway to something quite spectacular, I think.
Yeah. So we'll hear from Heather how, you know, relatively modest upbringing, dealing with tragedy, and now generating over £20,000 a month in recurring income. So it's a bit of a longer interview today. So I think let's head over and listen to our conversation with Heather Smail. Heather, welcome to Wealth Talk today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Christian. And thanks for speaking to me today.
You're welcome. I believe this is your first ever podcast. Is that correct?
It is, yes. I was quite amused then when you said, you know, you've done a couple of podcasts, but no, I certainly haven't. So this is a brand new experience. And like I say, I'm in your capable hands.
Yes, well, it's definitely not my first, but good to have the world exclusive here with you anyway. And such an amazing story that you have, Heather. So, cannot wait for you to share this with our listeners today. But I think the best thing is probably just to have you introduce yourself and your company and let everyone know what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis at the moment.
Yeah, so absolutely. So my name's Heather Smail. My company is Blonde Property Limited. I set that company up around about 2 years ago now, during COVID. And basically, what do I define myself as? Property developer, property investor, property trader as well. And that's something that I've been doing for the last 12 years. 12 years ago, I bought my first investment property. pretty much by chance, and only ever intended to have one property, that property, as an additional pension fund. And then now, 12 years later, I find myself approaching 30 properties in the portfolio. I've done a lot of flips. I've lost count of the amount of flips that I've done now. 5 years ago, I took the decision to leave my day job as a buyer and work for myself full time, which wasn't an easy decision to make because it was leaving behind a good job and lots of financial security. But I had this burning desire that I needed to work for myself and be my own boss and make my own decisions. And in the last 2 years, especially through word of mouth, I have started to work as I don't like the word sourcer, but that is essentially what I do, but more of a consultant, a property consultant for clients who are looking to start their property investment journeys themselves and know very little about it and have seen the results that I've been able to achieve, which has allowed me to achieve some, a good degree of financial freedom. That's a new word to me, but it essentially is that. And they have, asked me to mentor them and to coach them and to also assist them in finding good investments to help generate their own wealth and to pass that wealth on to their children.
Yeah, no, that's a great summary. Thank you, Heather. And you talked about the portfolio you've got there. And can you just give us a ballpark figure, in terms of recurring income on a monthly basis, where that places you at?
In terms of recurring income at the minute, that gives me around about £20,000 a month.
Yeah. And of course, we help our members to really pinpoint what it means to them to be financially secure and financially independent. And, it's a different number for everyone. But you mentioned about leaving your job 5 years ago. And did you have a target in terms of income before you made that decision?
I didn't actually. I was what focused my mind was that I actually went onto I believe it was called a Discovery Day call with a property sourcer, and this was like a Zoom meeting with about 10 of myself, so 10 potential clients of this sourcer who is quite, is a big company that does this. And for some reason, I ended up on this Discovery Day thinking that I would just let them find property deals for me. And there was a guy on there, another investor like myself, and he got asked the very direct question of, what do you want to achieve as a monthly income? And he said, I want 10k a month. And I thought, actually, that sounds all right. I'm going to, I want 10k a month as well. So that focused my mind for the first time on a monthly sort of goal to achieve. But the main thing that happened is that following that Zoom meeting, I actually realised that the deals that this sourcing company was presenting to us weren't as good as the deals that I could achieve. So that really made me think, actually, I'm doing better than this. And why am I even sat on this Zoom meeting right now? I mean, I'm going to potentially pay somebody else to find properties for me when I've been doing this, for years and not even realised how, how good that was compared to this big company who were charging, quite high fees to find properties that I just thought were quite mediocre. So I came away from that Zoom meeting with two things going on in my mind. And one was to achieve that 10k a month, because I thought that's a nice figure and that's beyond anything at that point in time that I thought I would achieve. But I actually went down and sat and looked at my Excel spreadsheet and thought, I could actually achieve that. And the other thing that happened is that I came away thinking, do you know what? I'm a little bit better than this than I realised. But what happened is I've never had, it was only 3 years ago that I actually went to my first networking meeting in property. I never knew a single other person who was a property investor for 9 years until 3 years ago, when I went to a networking meeting via a friend, and she said, do you want to come along? And I said, yeah, okay, what's all this about? And went into that meeting, and I was quite nervous actually when I first went in there, and thought, there's going to be people in there with hundreds of properties in their portfolios. And I think I had about 10 or 11 at the time. And I actually left that meeting realising that actually there was only one person in that room that had more properties than me and more experience. And that was a bit of a game changer as well. So in terms of achieving that monthly figure, there was that definite point when the 10K a month became almost like a visual target that I had to achieve. And then subsequently, I did achieve that, which wasn't too difficult because I was probably up to like 6, 7K already. But the last 2 years have actually then doubled that to the 20K a month. So the 10 years previous to that almost took 10 years to build that 10K, but then in the last 2, it doubled.
Yeah.
And it's still growing now. So that's the realization that, you know, all of that work that you put in to chip away for all these years. And it was difficult because I had a full-time job. I had my daughter. I was a single mum for a time as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So it's not been an easy ride, but it's certainly, it's my world now has just become immense. It's just opened up, and I can see that sort of compounding effect really starting to kick in now.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing there. The compound effect really has accelerated you, hasn't it? And I want to take you back in a minute to obviously kind of where this all began, and obviously the journey you've had up until today. But it's you mentioned the last couple of years, especially, but we all know the last couple of years was in lockdown, right? Was during COVID, where we couldn't even go out and do anything. So yeah, you bought 13 properties during COVID, is that right?
Yes. So what happened is that I had a bit of a mindset change. So COVID happened, didn't it? And then something happened to me that infuriated me and set something alight inside me. So I did not like the fact that that the government was saying you can only go out for 1 hour of exercise per day. You can only do this. You can only do that. And I watched my daughter not being able to go to school, and she's an only child, and she would have been 12 years old at the time, and she loves school. She loves learning, and it really, really affected her in a very negative sense, and it became a very, very difficult situation to homeschool, and for both of us to just, it was a very depressing and psychologically quite damaging time, potentially. We got through it, and she's absolutely fine now. But the upshot of that is that it just, something in me clicked, and I thought, I don't want to, my freedom is everything to me. And I hadn't really realised how important it was before, because it had never come into question. So, and also on the news, it was saying, there's going to be a 20% dip in house prices. We're in for a massive shock. But I noticed, because I've always got my eyes and ears to the ground in terms of property, I noticed that wasn't happening. And it started there was little signs that it was going the other way. So I thought, hang on, so a couple of things kicked in. I wanted that 10K a month. I was frustrated at being told what to do, because in many respects, that's happened to me all my life. And I just had enough of it. I'm 44 years old now. I just thought that's enough now. My daughter was suffering. We were all suffering. So I just thought, right, focus on getting that 10K a month. I set myself a target of buying 8 properties that year. And it then just the momentum started to build very, very quickly, because the market took an upward trend. And then, in fact, in Nottinghamshire, in some areas, we saw up to 30% capital growth in 12 months. And luckily, because I had my eyes and ears to the ground, I was able to spot this happening and just jump on property after property and buy. And it was lucky that I'd actually gone through a refinancing exercise just before that time. So I did have a cash pot ready to purchase property. The main goal of that was to generate income. So I wasn't necessarily looking for property deals where they required any particularly extensive refurb. It was just to build up that cash flow so that I had safety and security, and it essentially bought me a level of financial freedom. But what did happen is that along the way, I bought 13 properties, and 8 of those properties turned out to be all money out deals. So I don't know if people are aware of what an all money out deal is, but it's where you, for one reason, and some of them weren't even full refurbs. They tend to be a full refurb where you buy a distressed property in a bad state and you go in and you refurbish that property and you add value. And then you refinance that property and you've added the value and the mortgage comes through and you get all or nearly all of your money back out. Some of these I didn't even really need to do that much to. There was one, for example, the seller was in America and needed to have a fast sale, and I purchased a property for £65,000 from them. It was on the market at 75 grand, but I managed through my negotiation skills to get that down. So 65 grand. That was 18 months ago now. It was just refinanced recently. The value is 105,000. There was no refurb required to that property at all. So it's just literally being very flexible with your approach and understanding the seller's position and being able to, help them out of a situation that they might be in. But then you are also capitalizing on that as well and generating the increase in value that way. But yeah, it was quite phenomenal. So I bought 13 properties in 12 months and also bought some properties for investors as well. And yeah, 8 of those for myself turned out to be all money out deals.
Yeah. So I think it's clear for anyone listening now, Heather, that you're, a highly committed, highly hardworking individual who really knows what she's doing. But I think the fascinating thing here that you mentioned is you had no real training, no education up until just the last few years when you even realized that there was this world of property networking events that was going on around you. So perhaps, we can go back to kind of what first got you into property and early years for you, Heather, and I know some of the difficult times that you've had to experience along the way.
Yeah, definitely. So I've not had an easy life. I sort of state on my Instagram page that I sort of came from nothing and I've gone to something. Basically, when I was a very young child, we were fairly well off. My dad was an accountant, chartered accountant by trade, but he was at a level where he was a financial director. So he ran his own company. When I was 4 years old, he became ill through an operation that actually went wrong, and that is a whole other story. That is a big other story. But he nearly died following that, and his life was saved. But it meant that he then went through 13 operations within the next 10 years, and he tried to resurrect his business, and he was a real businessman. He was pretty high flying back in the 80s. This was, because I was born 77, so this would have been 1981. And anybody that remembers the 80s knows that it was a big boom time, but then we had the big recession at the end of the 80s. So in a nutshell, we, over a course of a number of years, we just went from being fairly wealthy, because he couldn't really work again, to any money that he had saved up and any kind of insurances. They didn't cover everything that a growing family would need. So when I was aged 12, we finally lost everything and our house was repossessed. And we moved to a pretty rough council estate in Mansfield in Nottinghamshire. And my life completely changed then. But I was well aware before that point that we didn't seem to have money. We still had a big house, but we just couldn't sustain that, and we lost it all. And from that point on, I just watched my mum and dad really, really struggling. My mum, they were both lovely, lovely people, and my mum had various jobs, but essentially she'd been a housewife, she'd been a mum, and eventually my father died when I was 17, and my mother and I were in we were poor. We didn't have anything. I was the kid at school that didn't have the Nike trainers that everybody wanted. I never had anything like that. We shopped in charity shops and we had a budget. I still remember budgeting with my mum in Tesco's, which was the local supermarket, and we had a set amount of money that we could spend every week. And it was low. It was, my mum was a fantastic cook. She could make lovely meals from hardly anything, but I couldn't do things that my friends were all doing. I couldn't go places that they could go to. And then following that, my dad died when he was 55 and I was 17. And then my mum actually died when she was 60. And she really was as fit as a fiddle. She was, a very healthy, fit lady, but she got lung cancer and she died. And I was 23 when she died. So that was absolutely devastating. My dad had been ill for so many years that I kind of was always on edge thinking that he, how long will my dad be around? As a child growing up, and I was aware of that. But my mum's illness came out of the blue. So, and she was just an incredible woman. So my absolute inspiration. So to lose her, it still gets to me now. And this is it's 20 years ago. So again, I was 23 at the time. Didn't really, I had a decent job, but it was quite low paid. I think what happened to me is that I just had such low self-esteem coming from the council estate, coming from, losing everything, everybody being ill, things happening in life. It just, I was always clever at school. I was always able to get top marks at a lot of different subjects, and I did well at uni. But it just felt a bit rubbish, really, which is understandable looking back. And then, so I was with my partner at that time, who I met when I was fairly young, just before my 18th birthday. And then we actually, he managed to buy a house that we lived in when I was nearly 20. So quite young, moved out. My mum died when I was 23, and then I lived with Damon. And we were very happy. And then completely out of the blue, when I was 29 years old and he was 34, so he was 5 years older than me, he got a cold and felt unwell, as you would, and got headaches. And then the cold went away and the headaches didn't go away. So we went to the doctor, and in a nutshell, we saw 8 different doctors. We ended up in A&E, and he collapsed. We were released from A&E, and then he collapsed in the car park. And because he was, he was a big, strapping 6'4" guy, he's really healthy, he's young. They did a blood test which showed there was nothing wrong, they said. So he collapsed. They eventually scanned him, and then he had a massive brain tumour. And this was in November. And then he died in January the 27th. And we'd been together nearly 13 years, and I was pregnant with our daughter at the time. So it was just, that nearly destroyed me, if I'm honest, completely, because it was just, I can feel myself getting a bit emotional now, Christian, sorry. But it was just completely and utterly mind-blowing that your life will just, I'd had this all my life where unusual events had happened, people being ill, one after the other, but that nearly tipped me over the edge, because you just felt completely at rock bottom. There was not a single aspect of my life that remained the same after that point. And that was in January 2007. Then my daughter, I went through the whole pregnancy, of course, myself, was quite unwell, lost quite a lot of weight just through not really being able to, just being in a whirlwind of like, what is going on? This is crazy. This world is just crazy now. And I've always been a very grounded person, and, but I just kind of felt like I was losing the plot. which understandably you would do. So went through the pregnancy, lost a lot of weight, whereas, a lot of women will actually put a bit of weight on. I went the other way, had a fantastic midwife who I give her all credibility for, in many ways, saving my life, because I was just at the point where I just didn't even want to be here. And she arranged that I saw a fantastic counsellor I only know her name is Rachel. And she transformed my mindset and my thinking and actually kept me in this world. And from that point on, it was horrendous, because I was, my daughter was born. I was a single mum then. I had some fantastic friends. But it changes relationships with a lot of people. There are some people that you think will step up to the mark and be there, and they don't. They disappear because they realise it's such a serious situation that they can't cope with it. So, death brings out sometimes, obviously, the best in people sometimes, but it can bring out the worst in people as well. So it was a very bizarre period of my life. And, but yeah, following on from that, a couple of years after that point, I met my partner, and we're very, very happy now. But I'm very conscious that my life seemed to be picked up from one life, and I was on a certain path, and then it everything just got wrenched away, ripped away, and I was put on another path. And that's when I was working as a buyer, and I had a very steady job and kept working. But then just got to the point, like I say, it was 5 years ago, so I would have been 39. And I thought, you know what? Life is just so short. I'm aware every single day that people think they have all the time in the world, and you only get, we hear it all the time, you get one chance. But I thought, do I actually want to sit in this office? And it was a great job being a buyer. You meet people all the time, and I'm a very sociable person, so I love that aspect of it. I love making decisions. I'm a very decisive person. I thought, do I actually want to do this for somebody else, or do I just want to have a go? And it just came down to a conversation that I kind of had in my own brain. I thought, well, you know what? If it all fails and I can't make it work, then I will just go to a job interview and get another job, and that's it. And then, go back to where I am. But it was just that desire to just work for myself, to just do this for me. And yeah, and that's what led me to leave that job. And that took many months of and in the end, it just came down to a conversation where I had a boss who was a little bit of a micromanager and just told me that I couldn't go on holiday. And that was it. And I just thought, do you know what? I am going skiing, because it was a skiing holiday. And I thought, no, I am. And that was it. And then it was just all that build up. It was just one conversation. And that changed my life again. But it was something positive that I'd been in control of doing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's led me to where I am. But certainly when I left my job, I went through a period of, looking back now, I was depressed. And I'm not sure I've been depressed in the sense, I don't suffer with depression. I'm a very positive person, and I absolutely love being alive. I love meeting people. I love everything about life. So I've been through tremendous periods of grief, which have made me feel down. But when I left my job, because of that mind, I just lost my, you're not getting dressed up to go to the office every day. You've not got the phone ringing all the time. So for about 2 or 3 years, I felt lost. I was still carrying on with property, and I was still making money, and but it was a very lonely period because I didn't have the interactions and that I do now. And I've built my network up now in the last couple of years, and now that is all in place as well. So I just feel like so many aspects of my life have all clicked at once in the last, even in the last 18 months, 2 years, but literally every single week, something else will click and fall into place. And you think, wow, that's amazing as well. So it's kind of come full circle now, and it's all come together.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear now that there's so much kind of positive energy around, and that's obviously what's attracting all the good people to you, Heather. But thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's obviously difficult to reflect back on that, but important. I think such an important lesson for people, because everyone's going through struggles, right? We all have things in our lives, and you can make one decision to go one way or another to go another way, and yeah, it's not easy to keep focusing forwards and keep believing that, good will come. But, for anyone, even, talking about the job there, someone who feels like stuck in a rut, but is just letting that time continue to go on and another year go on and nothing changing, what kind of words of advice would you give?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because people are, I deal with many of my clients now, the consultancy work that I do with them, shall we say, it's not necessarily just about property, because it's often to do with their mindset as well. And advice that I would give is that it's hard if if you've not had people die on you. I know people that have never had a single member of their family die or a friend die or anything like that, and they're quite blasé about, I've got all the time in the world. So it's very difficult to realize that you haven't got all the time in the world, and that you really need to push yourself to make the best of what you can in life. There are some people out there who just aren't ambitious and who don't want to do that, and that's fine. That's taken me a long time to accept. I've got a friend who, she just said, I'm really, really happy just the way I am, and she kind of just plods along, and she's happy with that, and that's the realization as well. But certainly for people who feel like they're stuck and have this, desire to change and perhaps, work for themselves or set up a new business and become an entrepreneur or that kind of thing, it's not necessarily you don't have to make a big sweeping gesture to get yourself to where you want to be. It's the consistency of those small elements of determination. And when I look back, I realized that, I read a book, it's The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and somebody recommended this book to me just maybe, I think it was like 18 months ago. And I read it and I thought, hang on, this guy's writing, it's fantastic stuff, but I realised that's just naturally me. I am that person that if I see something on the floor that's not in the place it should be, I will pick it up as I'm going past. And that's, if you apply that mentally to other aspects of your life, it's like, hang on, you can actually squeeze that in whilst you're doing something else. But you've got to be very disciplined. I think there's some key words. There's being disciplined with yourself and realize and having patience as well, because people, they do like 3 things and then expect their life to change, and it's not going to happen. It's the consistency of the small efforts that you put in and being consistent with yourself. So it's discipline and momentum. They're my favorite words at the minute, and that's what I would say to people. It's just having. People talk about drive and determination as if it's some huge, big thing. And it's kind of, I don't think it is. It's the innate nature of yourself. It's what's embedded within you. And if you haven't naturally got that, then you need to speak to somebody, perhaps like myself, or that there's plenty of other people out there that can fire that up inside you.
Yeah, well, I know when we spoke last time, Heather, we talked about Jim Rohn, and one of Jim Rohn's quotes is discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. So I think you're spot on there with that one. I want to take you back to that first property purchase 12 years ago that kind of, I suppose, lit the touch paper for everything that you've done for the next 25 that followed. Tell us about that first deal for someone who's listening now, who's maybe right at that first point themselves.
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange one. So basically what happened is, so when my husband died, we were actually renovating an old cottage in Nottinghamshire where I live. And so I went through not only just being sort of like pregnant by myself, but I didn't have a kitchen floor at the time. Like when I say renovation, it was a full-on renovation. So there was bare earth as a kitchen floor. My midwife walked in and nearly went ballistic. But that aside, so I managed to renovate that property whilst being pregnant. And then when my daughter was born, she was about 2, and I just made the decision that I needed to sell it. I'd just finished the renovation. It looked absolutely fantastic. And everybody was saying to me, why are you selling this property? It's the best it's ever been. But do you know what it was? I wanted to leave that property with those memories. I wanted to get it to that point where, yes, it's the best it can possibly be. And that's what I want to remember, because that was something that my husband and I were aiming for together. So that was a big tick in the box. What happened is the property was valued at much more than I realised. So I found a property that I wanted to move to and kind of start afresh. And I had a surplus amount of money, which was £80,000. And that was the extra bit that I didn't realise this cottage was worth that much more. So I sold the cottage, bought my new house, and had 80 grand in the bank. And then I thought, right, well, this is doing nothing in the bank. So I remember, it's that age-old saying, isn't it? Safe as houses. And I remember my dad, saying, get into property, although he never did himself. I don't know why. I'd love to ask him that now. But it was that kind of, everybody knows that saying, don't they? So I thought, right, let me think about buying a rental property, a buy-to-let. So found a property in Hucknall in Nottinghamshire, which was a good area because it's got the tram and good transport links in terms of the M1, and it's quite close to town and to central Nottingham. And at the time, the market was nowhere near. I mean, the market in Nottinghamshire now is on fire, and it's always been quite a fast-paced market, but it wasn't anywhere near at that point, that it is now. So I went along, property was 79 grand, and it was with your move estate agents. The agent explained to me it's a repossession. I said, what's that? And she said, basically, well, I knew what a repossession was, but she said it's a corporate sale, blah, blah, blah. And there's all you have to, it goes to public notice and all the rest of it. So it's kind of in at the deep end, but it went quite smoothly. So I paid the asking. I said, well, I'll offer 79 grand. I couldn't understand why nobody was offering the money on the property. And she said, well, it's a roof that's putting people off. And it did need a new roof. And I kept nursing that roof along for 6 years, and then realised that I should have just put a new roof on at the beginning. But that was a learning curve. But bought the property for 79 grand and got a tenant in there immediately, paying 650. The good thing about that property was that it had been renovated by a builder 2 years before. So a full renovation, so full rewire, full replastering, new windows. He'd not done the roof, but he had literally done everything else. So I didn't have to do a thing. Tenant moves in, paying 650. And then I thought, right, I'll come to remortgage this, because somewhere along the line I realised that I can remortgage it and just get my money back out. And I thought, actually, that's good, because then the money's mine again. I've got options then again, and I've got a property. But you've got to bear in mind at this point, I was not a property investor. I knew nothing about property really. But I was quite good with figures being a buyer. So put in an application for a remortgage, and it came back, this is about 9 months later, with the value at 120,000. So then they said, there you go, you can have 90 grand on your buy-to-let mortgage. And I thought, well, how's that work? Because I've only paid 70. This sounds so basic now, but and at the time, being a buyer, we're at quite a decent high level. But I remember being sat with a colleague at work, and he was saying to me, well, how does that work? I was like, I don't really know. It's just weird, isn't it? And then I pay the mortgage, and then I've got this extra bit of cash flow, and that's profit. And he's like, that sounds all right. And I was like, yeah, that's good. So it makes me laugh now, because I just, knowing what I know now, but back then it was just a whole new concept. And obviously my daughter was young, so you're juggling, a young child and everything else that's going off in your life. So I got my 90 grand back, and then there was a bit of a pause, I guess, and thought, hang on, I've got 90 grand now. And then that's when it started my curiosity with it then started to get the better of me. So I started looking for other potential investments, and then bought another one which needed a bit of a renovation, and then added the value that way and remortgaged it. And then, funnily enough, that was an all money out deal. So pulled back all the money out again, and then thought, hang on, that was when the penny dropped. It's like, it clicked then. I was like, this is why people in property make money. And then I thought, this is dead easy. This is so easy. It's insanely easy. So then I just started to buy property and to flip, but I did a lot of flips in the early days, and was thinking about it the other day. We actually featured myself and Matt Copley of Holden Copley Estate Agents now. He's one of the directors there, good friend of mine that I've known a long time. We actually featured in the local Nottinghamshire Evening Post because I'd renovated a property and he immediately sold it within 24 hours. And at the time, it was the fastest selling property that anybody had ever sold. And they did a big feature on us. So I need to find that somewhere because it is there. And he was very, very encouraging towards me, Matt. And he's brilliant. He still is now. And he told me years ago he's like, dump your job. You must go into property because you've got a talent for it. But it was the self-doubt and low self-esteem that kept me working for other people.
So, that was, as we said, 12 years ago, 2010, around about that time, right? I mean, if someone had have said to you then, Heather, in 12 years' time, you're going to be generating this amount of money from property every month, you're going to have a client base of, 50, 60 clients who you're teaching and helping every day. I mean, what would you have said?
I would have thought they were on drugs or something. I was just sort of, it's just bonkers. It's weird because looking back, I know exactly every single detail of how I've got to where I've got. So some people actually get to where they've got and they don't know how they got there. I know exactly how I've got to where I've got, but I could not see that back 12 years ago. I literally, and that the one thing that held me back was the self-doubt. And that's what comes through with so many people that I interact with now. And that's part of my, I feel it's like a mission for me, is to help people to be brave and to help them to realize that we are actually all so much better than we realize and that we give ourselves credit for. And we can achieve so many things, but we all have our little self-doubts and our little niggles. And, and in many ways, the way that society teaches us to think about money and to think about wealth and to sort of like know our place and where we should be. And it's like, well, actually, you can do anything you want to do. You don't have to be born into a certain, certain set of circumstances and stay there. That's the thing. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. And I've had a few clients where I know that I have really helped them to break through that mental mindset. And to me, that's actually almost more satisfying than finding them a property bargain. The two go hand in hand. But when you can, some of the feedback that I've had from clients and some of the absolutely lovely messages are they're just so powerful and so emotional that I know that I've helped them change their lives, and it's also then helped change their children's lives, and it will do. And they've told me that they've been in a cycle for generations of in poor finances, and then we've finally broken through that for them. So to me, that's just amazing, because nobody should feel low in life. There's always a way to get yourself to feel better. And I always say to people, if you can't do that for yourself, and even if you're reading books and it's not clicking, then it is all about networking, and it's maybe just about finding somebody like me that can just help you to put you on the right path. And once you're on that right path, you can achieve all of that yourself. You will not need me then, but it's sometimes you just need a little bit of help for somebody to pick you up and put you in the right direction.
Yeah,
and so important.
Yeah, cornerstones of WealthBuilders, education, support, and connection. And obviously, we said, you didn't really have the education part, and you'd kind of self-taught. But having the right support around you, which obviously now is so valuable with the team that you've got, and obviously the connection, right?
I think that's going back to it. I've never been on a property training course. I'd love to actually go on one now, but all of the people that I've met in property keep saying, no, you don't need that. But I'm kind of curious now. I was thinking I've never been on one and I want to go on one and I can't find one. So it's, but I think for me, it was just instinct. And it was just that it was in a nutshell, growing up and watching my mum suffer with being poor and her world became very limited, and it was just that desire to provide a better upbringing for my daughter and to make sure, she's short on family. We don't have a lot of family at all, none really. She's just she's got me and she's got my partner John. But I thought the one thing that I can give you is opportunities, and I'm going to work my damnedest to make sure that you have the opportunities that I didn't have early on in life. Because there's one thing I wish had happened is that I could have achieved what I've achieved sooner. I'm not especially old. I'm 44, but you're conscious that, if you'd have achieved this 10 years ago, then I don't know. It's relative, isn't it?
Yeah. I think whatever age, we'd always hope we'd done it 10 years ago, right? Now, you mentioned opportunities there. So I'm curious, we're recording this podcast today, July 2022. We've been on this kind of amazing bull run of the last 8 years in property where it's just going up and up and up. You said it was easy when you first did that. You kind of buy, refurb, refinance, pulled the money out, you did it again, and the penny dropped for you. If someone was starting today with the market the way it is today, do you think it would be as easy for them to build the same wealth and the same size portfolio over the next 10 years?
Possibly not, but if they put the effort in, possibly not in broad brush terms, but I have had people like, we've talked about before, Christian, they're saying the market there are no deals out there. Quite frankly, that's a load of rubbish, because there is always a deal out there if you can be bothered to find it. And if you put yourself in the position of making sure that you're connecting with the right people and acting professionally and giving them confidence that they will sell to you, there is always deals out there. And I've had plenty of them myself and plenty of them for clients. And these deals are good. They've been all money out deals in the last 12 months. I mean, I've had the 8 for myself. I think there's another 6 for clients as well. So that is, people just look at me as if like, well, you're nuts. That can't be true. But literally, I can back that up with all the figures I've got on spreadsheets. Amazing deals. A lot of these are direct to vendor deals. People that they don't want to go through estate agents, so they want to sell quickly to reliable investors and reliable clients. And I always pre-approve all of my clients and make sure that they're in a position to move quickly and have got everything in place so that we aren't. The last thing I want to do is let anybody down in the chain. And it's that level of consistency that builds your reputation, and word of mouth passes on. And then somebody will say, oh, so-and-so wants to sell this property. Actually, Heather will know she'll either buy it herself or she'll have clients that will buy it.
Just to round things off then, Heather, it's always, such a joy speaking with you, and, so inspiring to hear everything you're doing and achieving. But at WealthBuilders, we obviously talk about building wealth across multiple pillars. Now, property has served you very well. However, you're now building your own business, right? Which is pillar number 5. And like so many people who are successful in property, but many people with a fraction of the experience and success that you've got, who then turn that into IP. So teaching others and, writing books and creating different assets that can help people. So, kind of where do you see that expanding for yourself?
I think it's funny that you mentioned writing books, because I actually, when I was younger, that's all I wanted to do. English was my best subject, and I had a fantastic English teacher, and he said, you must be an author. You must write books. And that's been something that has been put on the back burner for me. And I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing now, even though I absolutely adore what I do now. I love every single day is so different, and that's what I love. I love variety and the spontaneity of not knowing what's coming next. That to me is daunting for some people, but now I thrive on that. So like every day is a little challenge. But going back to writing, I would love to actually start to write books, and I've already made some steps towards that. And I think that's going to go down 2 different avenues. I think certainly a book about my own personal experiences in life, with a view to that being of some benefit and some inspiration and some help to other people, to give them hope that you can survive. your darkest moments, and you will come back stronger, definitely. And also I've been asked by a few people to write a book on property and building portfolios and that kind of thing, and just my experiences. So they are different aspects of writing that I'm going to explore, along with all the other stuff that I do, which is, renovate properties and work with clients and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, very exciting. Looking forward to that. And I guess just the final question for you, Heather, is, what's your vision now moving forwards? Have you set some new targets for yourself that you want to achieve?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go for the, I've learned a lot actually about visualization and visualizing your goals. And that's something that I'm continually learning about week in, week out. And I think it actually works. I literally do. There's plenty of evidence out there that it does work. And certainly when I envisaged the 10K a month target for my income, that was very clear to me. And I did write that down, and that I just then made it happen. So going forwards, I want to push it to 50K a month. And I also want to make sure that with part of that I'm paying some of that knowledge forward and helping others. I have actually helped, there's 2 clients that I've actually helped for free because of their sort of financial circumstances, and similar in some ways to the situations that I came from. So I just had a bit of a connection with them. But yeah, certainly I want to grow the business. I'm at the point now where I'm looking at taking on certainly an admin assistant and to move that forward. And yeah, just exploring more adventures in property, really.
And doing more podcasts, I think.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
How's your first one been?
It's been really nice, actually.
Good.
I've not had a million phone calls and, things like that. So, yeah, this has been lovely. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I've enjoyed it too, Heather. And thanks so much. I'm sure everyone listening will have been inspired by your story. And if someone wants to get in touch or follow you on social media, see what you're up to every day, where's the best place to go? The best place to go. So if you just type in at Blonde Property on Google, it will take you straight to Instagram, Facebook, there's LinkedIn. So all of those will flag up. But I do tend to find that the main influx of people is through Instagram. And that was a learning curve for me. People always talk about having a website. I don't actually have a website at the minute. That is work in production. But then so many people said to me, you know what? Instagram is a great channel to connect. And I do come from a marketing background, and I've realised that as well. And you can update it very quickly. And people love you'll see all sorts of updates on there. Funny things like when we had to rescue a pigeon from a chimney. Well, my handyman did actually, not me personally. But the highs and the lows of property are all on there, along with some very professional and substantial facts and figures on deals. And so it's just daily life. I just post things on there that that happen, and that's it's quite funny. I get a lot of comments saying it's nice to see something that's not actually as glamorous as people make out it is. So you'll get everything on there. Yeah, great, Heather. Good luck with everything moving forward. We'll definitely be in touch. But thank you for being a great guest on Wealth Talk today. You're welcome, and thank you for having me. Okay, some fantastic words there shared by Heather. Really, really inspiring. And we'll dig into some of those lessons, Kevin, that we can expand on. Before we do that, let's head over to Trustpilot. And we've had a few reviews over the last week or two, and let me pull out one in particular. This one is from Rob, and Rob says that he had his wealth roadmap call with myself, and he said Christian was so insightful, helpful, and genuine. Really listened to me and put together a fantastic roadmap for me to work on. Thanks again. Highly recommend to anybody interested in increasing their wealth. And thank you, Rob, for that. And I have been busy actually over the last couple of weeks or so, because we did a webinar, didn't we, at the end of June, where we just really shared what the WealthBuilders Academy is there for, to help people move from financial insecurity through to financial independence. And we shared the roadmap with around about 200 people on that call. And we offered a free wealth mapping call for anyone that...
you were a busy boy, weren't you?
Yeah, so that was fantastic.
No wonder you picked out a little review to give yourself a pat on the back.
No, I appreciate that.
However, having said that, I think it was really good to give people a bit of an insight into a roadmap for themselves, seeing their money often in one place for the first time, actually. And when you do that, it gives you a sense of what your leverage is, certainly the financial leverage. And I think that's helpful. So even if people decided not to join the timing, wasn't right to come and immerse themselves in their wealth, they just wanted to get a sample, you did a great job. So, and we're generous with our time in that regard, or we want to be, don't we, in terms of just letting people know what we do. And then when they're ready, they'll connect with us in whatever way is right for them. And we're happy with that, frankly.
Yeah. So, okay. Looking back at some of the things that Heather shared with us just now, and if we focus on step one again, mindset, often it's really connecting with your reason why. And we talk about a catalyst that happens in people's lives. And, sometimes that's a catalyst that is born around tragedy. And we know, obviously, Kevin, sharing your story as well many times on the podcast, that can be a powerful reason why for people, and really kind of set the sail for people to say, okay, I'm not going to let this happen again, or I'm going to change it. And that very much was the case for Heather.
Yeah, and I think she framed it in a slightly different way. I mean, you don't need tragedy to light a fire, but tragedy can certainly be a very powerful one. Was for me. My reaction was different to Heather's. I mean, and also her tragedy was much worse. I mean, she lost her father, her mother, and her husband, all in relatively quick succession. And that could set somebody back, really. That could knock them completely off course. But she was determined, and that determination has really shone through. So definitely testimony to her resilience. And I think it's important to recognize that resilience is a skill, a quality, in order to not just see what's out there and think, oh, well, there's no point doing anything, but to almost, I think she said something about, she realized that life was precious and we don't have as much time. People will always put things off. I'll do it next year. I'll do it when the situation improves. They'll do it sometime in the future. And she grasped that opportunity. And I think congratulations to her. And I'm sure our listeners will be inspired by that. And hopefully, you can get a catalyst from somebody else. And that's what inspiration is, just a way to light another fire. So I very much hope that she's inspired some people to take action.
Yeah, and Heather's definitely taking action in a big way herself now. And episode 2 of this podcast, which for anyone who's listening who hasn't checked into the early episodes, I would suggest go back, listen to that. It was the 3 Ds, our most downloaded
now, Chris, but
we've got 4. But back in the day, we had 3, and that was the drifters, the DIYers, and the dynamics. And for a long time, Heather was DIYing it. And we know there are some dangers to that approach.
Look, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of DIY. And DIY means at least you're taking action. But I think my own experience of DIY is it took me 15 years to achieve financial independence because I wasn't really thinking about it, didn't have a really clear plan, didn't have a guide, didn't have a mentor, didn't have a roadmap. But now you can get a roadmap. You can accelerate that. You can massively benefit from the intellectual shortcuts of people like me, people like Heather, and many others who would serve as inspiration. And you can achieve your financial independence in a fraction of the time, typically 5 years now, Chris. And 5 years of working hard, some sacrifices, sure, but 5 years to become financially independent forever, it's really not too big a price. At least I don't think so. Do you?
No, absolutely not. And obviously Heather mentioned purchasing her first property 12 years ago. And the first 10 years, she obviously saw some growth, but it was in the last 2 years where that hockey stick effect just absolutely took over. And that's the power of compounding.
Well, that really comes to stage 9, isn't it? When we talk about the acceleration. So but you can't get there. You can't go from stage 1 to stage 9 on the roadmap without taking steps. So we just encourage everybody to take a small step, one little baby step every month. And if they do that, then they'll inevitably get to that compounding. It's a bit like being in a car, Chris. We got 7 assets. Imagine you've got a car with 7 gears. You can't really get very far in the first gear. You hear the grinding, you'd hear the noise. It wouldn't be very comfortable. You could probably get some speed up, but you need to go through the gear. So you can't, and similarly, you can't go from a standing start in a vehicle to gear 7. The engine would fall out. So you have to take small steps. And that's the thing that Heather has taught us. And now she's taking bigger steps, of course. But I think taking small steps, consistently taking action is the key to building wealth, not consistently thinking about taking action or trying to take the highest and best form of action, as our paralysis analysis people sometimes do, get overwhelmed by choice. So they get stuck on doing nothing because they're waiting for all the lights to be green before they set off on their journey. And of course, that's impossible. So, I think Heather did a great job of, giving some of the lessons that we teach anyway, Chris.
One of those big decisions for Heather along the way was when to leave her job. Something close to my heart, of course, where I help people escape the rat race and, sacking their boss at the right time. And it's a key decision to make. And, when is the right time? Certainly, we don't recommend anybody kind of jump ship without having a solid foundation of recurring income and asset income already in place.
Yeah.
And, for someone listening now, there may well be people kind of not enjoying the day job, not enjoying the routine, but kind of fearful and unsure of when do they make that transition?
Or even being in a business, self-employed, being a technician, doing things that they don't want to do anymore. Or even if you love your job, but you just want to not be almost stuck in a place where if you got fired, if you got made redundant, if something went wrong with the economy, that you're not protected against that. But what I found quite fascinating with Heather's story is she was a buyer. And what's she now? She's a buyer. Instead of buying, whatever she was buying in her business or in her job, buying for somebody else, making profit for somebody else. Key distinction here, right? That most people are, we talked in a previous podcast, Chris, I can't remember when, a few ago. We talked about being in the retail space or the wholesale space or the creator space. And being in the retail space basically means somebody else is getting wealthy from you. Now, when you're in a job, somebody else is getting wealthy from you. That's just the way it is, right? So, you've got to make profit. So in order for them to make profit, you've got to be paid less. That's just the way. In the same way as savers get less than the banks because the banks are lending money to someone else at a profit. So you've got to understand that in the retail environment, you're always, always, always going to be the worst off when it comes to value. So she shifted from being in the retail space, working for somebody else, to buying for herself. And now she's creating because she's now helping other people buy. She's recognized, although it took her a while, I think, to recognize her own value. I think she spotted that, didn't she, when she went on a course, looked around, thought, hang on a minute, I've been DIY, I need to go on a course. Went on a course, looked around, went, hang on a minute. I think I've done more than, everybody else or most people on the course. And so I think there's a little bit of that concern about doing things in a DIY. You don't see your own progress. So you don't see how far you've come because there's only you watching yourself, which again is another reason why I think having a community, having accountability, you can celebrate the journey and the progression you make along the way and share with others. And hopefully she'll be doing much more of that now.
Yeah, we hope so. And, great message, really, for anyone feeling a little bit stuck at the moment, like everything's too hard, can't find any deals, everything's possible. And it's all really starts in the mindset. If you believe you can achieve it, then you probably can. So,
yeah, but that sounds a bit too woo-woo for me, Chris. As a wealth builder, I'm a very practical guy. What I'm saying is, the principle we follow at WealthBuilders is who, not how. So if you don't know how, somebody else has already done it or somebody else already doing it. So there's a pathway that's already been created. So you just have to be open-minded and not closed-minded. I find so many people who are not financially independent, they have a closed mind. And that mind is closed to what's going on in the world, closed to their own ability, closed to the risks. I mean, Heather was saying she knew, she had a feeling, didn't she, that if it didn't work, she'd always get another job. She knew. She had confidence in knowing, I did a good job, I could do a good job, I could get a job. But, that's a key thing. So backing yourself, and if you're not comfortable backing yourself, get the support, get a community around you. Don't make decisions just on your own. Then you can smooth that path. And that's really what Wealth Builders was created to do, Chris, to help people make that journey, cross that bridge from where they are now to where they want to be, but being on a bridge with others, reaching forward to ask for help, and then in due course, reaching backwards to help people because you've moved further along. And that's a really good visualization I would have anybody try and internalize, to see that, well, all you've got to do to cross the bridge is take the first step on it.
Yeah. And that journey from insecurity to independence, as we've said earlier, is one of, around about 5 years. If you have a clear plan, you have good support, and you're focused and committed. And the best time to take that first step really is today. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll be taking a step back actually for the next few weeks, won't we, Kevin? Because we're going to take the month of August off, as we always do, and just recharge and get ready for coming back strong in September for that final push of 2022.
Well, as Dr. Stephen Covey, who's no longer with us, in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People eloquently describes, step number 7 or habit number 7 is sharpen the saw. So we need to take time out, Chris. We need to get our saws out, get our axes out, get them all polished up and ground and ready to carve a pathway for the next batch of willing participants on the Wealth Builder journey. And in a couple of months' time, we'll be opening our doors again. So if you're inspired or interested in what we have to say, just how will people reach out, Chris? Because we're going to take a break, but we've still got the team working.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just dropping us an email, hello@wealthbuilders.co.uk is the easiest way to get in touch. And of course, we're on all the socials. So come and join us inside our Facebook community. It's free to join. And of course, we're both in there. So yeah, search for Wealth Builders online. You'll find us.
Okay.
Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks for listening today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Kevin, enjoy your break, and we'll catch up same time, same place in September.
Yes, well, it will be a little bit of a break. So not next week, but we'll see you in September, everyone. And look forward to talking to you again then.
See ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build, and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.